Good evening, everyone. Today we're going to cover the topic on leadership, and this is a chart which I drew up, which helps people remember which category, which leadership theory belongs in which category. And it's important to know that because you have many theories with different characteristics, and this is like a useful categorization. So if I can just tell you, the words are a bit small, so I'll just tell you what the words are. Universal refers to this box and this box. Contingent refers to this box and this box. Trait refers to, the word trait here refers to this box and this box. And behavioral, short form behavioral, is this box and this box. So let me explain to you what I mean by universal versus contingent. Universal means that these leadership theory, this particular leadership theory says that a good leader, this is a good leader, and this leader is good for all situations. That's what I mean by universal. A leader which is prescribed to be good is good for all situations. Whereas contingent means it depends. It depends. So meaning that what is a good leader in situation A might be a bad leader, that same leader might be a bad leader in situation B. So it depends on the situation. That's what contingent theory means, and these two theories lie in that category. Now, next one is trait versus behavioral. Trait is like personality trait, you're born with it. So according to these two theories, a person is born with these leadership traits. Whereas with this behavioral, it says that leadership traits can be taught. And we always hear the debate about can leadership, are leaders born or are they made? There is often a debate about that. And I like to draw the analogy with sports people. So, are good tennis players born or are they made? I believe that you first have to be born. The really, really good tennis players or the really, really good leaders, they are born. And they also are trained as well. So you have the two, then you'll be among the best in the world. But having said that, there's a lot of value in learning about leadership styles, because no matter what your born talent is, something that you can't change anyway, you can still focus on the behavioral to improve your leadership skills. Okay. So the words here are trait, over here Michigan Studies, Ohio State Studies, Blake and Wooten's leadership grid, and we go this way, and then Fiedler's LPC, and Hersey and Blanchard's life cycle theory and path goal theory. That's just the sequence of the leadership theories that we'll go through. We start with the universal trait theories. So, first of all, what is leadership? The ability to influence a group towards the achievement of goals. That's one definition of leadership. In contrast, management is probably the use of authority to get other people to do what you want them to do. So leadership is about influence, whereas management is more about being in a position, the title manager, and you have subordinates under you. So while you're still the manager and while they're still the subordinates under you, the subordinates have to do what the manager tells them. Whereas leadership is often without any kind of formal relationship. It can be, it's a result of power or sometimes charisma that followers they identify with a particular follower and do what they tell them. Okay, so remember the first box on the top left-hand corner, the trait theories, which are both universal as well as trait. So trait theories or leadership, theories that consider personality, social, physical, or intellectual traits to differentiate leaders from non-leaders. Now, one of the earliest theories of leadership, they looked at military leaders, and they said that leaders are tall, dark, and handsome. So rules out women. Okay. Unfortunately, if you use that definition of what is a good leader. So the earliest leadership theories, they focus on the physical, because why they're looking at the old military leaders. Then came along, people who were not so tall and not so handsome. People like perhaps Hitler and Napoleon, who are equally powerful. So they realize the physical traits are not as important as what's inside of the person. So they start developing a list of traits like ambition and energy, desire to lead, honesty and integrity, self-confidence, intelligence, job-relevant knowledge. These are the commonly cited characteristics of or traits of effective leaders. And the problem is that the list became longer and longer until it was virtually useless, because there was like 100 items, a list of 100 items, so it's not really useful. And the objections or the limitations: no universal traits that predict leadership in all situations. So already there's an argument for the contingency school. Remember the boxes on the right side? There's already starting the argument for a contingency theory. And traits predict behavior better in weak than strong situations. Weak situations meaning that there's a lot of unstructured situations where it's capable of influence. There's a lot of not much of order. Strong is like, there's a lot of bureaucracy and order. So traits predict behavior better in weak situations than in strong situations. And furthermore, there's unclear evidence of cause and effect of relationship. So it ultimately is just a better predictor of the appearance of leadership than distinguish effective and ineffective leaders. Because when you look at the traits, how do you actually measure performance of the leader? It's not very easy, but you can predict the appearance. How good is the appearance of leadership? So that's the box on the top left-hand corner, the universal and trait. Now the box at the bottom left-hand corner, still universal, but instead of trait is now behavioral, right? If you remember the box. So behavioral theories of leadership, theories proposing that specific behaviors differentiate leaders from non-leaders. And this is the debate between the two. Leaders are born and not made, and then that's a trait theory saying that. And behavioral theory believes that leadership traits can be taught. So it's really pointless having a debate. And I know some people who have fixed ideas of these two, but I believe that is usually a combination. And perhaps to be one of the best leaders in the world, then you have to have some, a genetic component. But it doesn't mean that behavioral theories or leadership traits can never be taught. If good management or good leadership cannot be taught, you all might as well go home now. So I do believe that leadership traits can be taught. Whether you be the best in the world, well, you need a bit of this as well. Okay, let me start with the Michigan studies first, then I'll go back to Ohio. Okay? There's a reason for that. Okay, Michigan studies is both Michigan and Ohio studies. They are the universal and behavioral. Right? So they predict that there's a certain kind of behavior a good leader behaves, and that leader is good in all situations, according to their way of thinking. So Michigan studies, okay, now I want you to put the word O-R in between. And again, there's a reason which I'll explain. O-R, or. Okay, let me explain to you what is employee-oriented, or what they did. University of Michigan, they did a research and they identified effective leaders and non-effective leaders. And they found that, you know, the effective leaders behave slightly differently from non-effective leaders. So the leaders both, they can exhibit one or the other behavioral style. So employee-oriented mean, what is employee-oriented mean? Emphasizing interpersonal relations, taking a personal interest in the needs of employees and accepting individual differences among them. Basically, the leader is employee-centered or employee-oriented. They emphasize on interpersonal relationships and get to know these people at the individual level. And then the other one is production-oriented leader, one who just emphasizes on the tasks or technical aspects of the job. So for example, a leader who's employee-oriented, when they see a subordinate, a leader who's employee-oriented will ask, how are you? Whereas a production-oriented leader, when they see an employee, they will ask, how's the job? Have you done it? How's work? They will ask about this. Okay? And according to Michigan, a leader exhibits this one or this one. Employee-oriented or production-oriented, but not both. Now, you might disagree with it at this stage, but that's what University of Michigan does. And okay, which one do you think, if you ask to choose of the two, which one do you think the study shows that that leader is a more effective leader? Employee-oriented or production-oriented? According to the results study. Employee-oriented. Okay, according to the results of the study, it showed that employee-oriented leaders are better leaders than production-oriented leaders. So let's go on to the one before, which is Ohio State studies. And I like you to write the word and, A-N-D / or. A-N-D / or in between for Ohio State studies. Now, Ohio State studies is a different state in the US, as most of you will know. And the research was conducted roughly at about the same time, but obviously different place in the US. Similar behaviors that they observed. There's a consideration that only the word, the technical name or label is different, but the word they use here is consideration, which is very similar to employee-oriented. If you look at the content here, the extent to which a leader is likely to have job relationships characterized by mutual trust, respect for subordinates' ideas and feelings. So they're basically the same as employee-oriented, just use a different label. And initiating structure is very similar to production-oriented. To look at goal, attainment, and all that. But the difference with Ohio State studies is that, according to their research, they said that a good leader, not a good leader, a leader can exhibit this, or both. The Michigan say you can't have both, but here you can say you can have both, this, or both. So which leader do you think is the best leader, according to this theory? The one that has both, yeah? And now you can see that it makes a bit more sense, right? Because I'm sure that when I was going through Michigan, some of you might be thinking, well, can't you have both? You know, that a leader who does both will probably be a better leader because they focus on the task, but at the same time, they don't ignore the feelings. They handle the two together. So who's right? Michigan or Ohio? Well, if you look at another theory, the Blake and Munchen, you can write the words here. Sorry, it's quite good. Blake and Munchen. they came up with, well, managerial grade or leadership grade. The words are interchangeable. You know, when they're running a management course, they call it management grade. When they're running a leadership course, they call it leadership grade. But it's the same thing. Huh? So the Blake and Wooten's managerial or leadership grade. It's a questionnaire, and if you answer the questionnaire is about what behavioral styles do you practice. And after answering the questionnaire, you will get a score which will place you in one of the boxes here. And according to them, according to Blake and Wooten, the 9 is the best. The 9, what does 9 mean? Well, there is the concern for production as well as concern for people, so high concern for people. So the top right hand corner usually is the best because it has both. And that's what the managerial grid does. So if you have your score anywhere here in these boxes here, then your goal is to find out what kind of behaviors you are lacking and then simply adopt the behavior so that you will reach that box in the top right hand corner. Simple as that. Okay? If you're honest with your answers, I think it can work because you see what behaviors you are lacking and then just do that behaviors more often and you'll reach the top right hand corner. Now, because remember, we are in the universal theory still, okay? So Blake and Wooten does not say that there's a good leader in this situation but bad leader in another situation. They don't say that. Huh? So for example, they don't say that this leader is good in one situation but bad in another situation. They don't do that, unfortunately. According to them, just go for the 9-9 and that's the best. Here is somewhere in between. Here you've got extremes in behaviors. So whatever behaviors that you're lacking, you just improve on them. For example, if you've got high concern for production but low concern for people, well, then you ought to be trained to be, how to behave and know how to talk to subordinates in a way that they feel more, more connection with the leader. And of course, the worst is here. It's like you might as well not be around. This is probably the boss's son in here, the 1-1. So that's on the managerial grid. Okay, this is the Fiedler's least preferred coworker questionnaire. Now I want you all to first of all think of the person with whom you work least well with. He or she may be someone you work with now, or maybe someone you knew in the past. He or she does not have to be the person you like least well, but should be the person with whom you now have or have had the most difficulty in getting a job done. So identify one person that you've got the most difficulty in getting a job done. So obviously it's at work. Okay. So I want you all to think about now. Just select one person. You don't have to name the person. Just think of one person. From all experience of difficult people to work with. Have you all identified one person? Okay, now as you think of this person, describe this person as he or she appears to you by circling the appropriate number and which you believe best describes that person. So you are giving a rating for that person, okay? Now, how would you describe the person? Pleasant or unpleasant? The more unpleasant the person is, the numbers you should be choosing are closer to that word. The more pleasant the person is, the numbers that you should be choosing, you could choose 8 or 7 or 6, one of these numbers. But the person somewhere really in the middle, then it could be a 4 or 5. So just pick one number, and I want you all to write down on a piece of paper or something. Just write down the number. Okay? For pleasant or unpleasant, how would you rate this person? Friendly or unfriendly? How would you rate this person? Give that person a score. Next one, rejecting or accepting. Here I mean like, is he rejecting of you and your ideas, or is he or she accepting of you as a person or your ideas? And notice that the numbers are the other way around. It's not a typing error. Just if the person is very rejecting, then choose numbers 1, 2, or 3. If the person is very accepting of ideas or of you as a person, then you choose 6, 7, or 8. Rejecting or accepting. Next one, helpful or frustrating. Is the person helpful to you, or is he just frustrating to work with? You understand frustrating? Unenthusiastic or enthusiastic. Person with a lot, enthusiastic is a person with a lot of energy, they're very positive. Now, number 6, is a person tense or relaxed? Is a person distant or close? Now, this one doesn't refer to physical distance. Some people, they're very formal, that you try to be friends with them, but they're not really friends with you. They're very formal and just talk about work and nothing else. That's distant. And close is the opposite. Okay, next one is cold and warm. Again, doesn't refer to temperature. Some people, they are warm and friendly type, whereas other people are very like formal type. There's no emotion at all. Cold. Number 9 is cooperative or uncooperative. Number 10 is supportive or hostile. Hostile is like, like an enemy. Enemy. 11 is boring or interesting. 12 is quarrelsome or harmonious. Harmonious, they're easy to get along with. Quarrelsome, always arguing. Self-assured or hesitant. Self-assured is like confident. And hesitant, like you ask him or her about anything, they are afraid to tell you. Efficient or inefficient, that's clear. Gloomy or cheerful. Gloomy is the opposite of cheerful. And open versus guarded. Open, like you know much about that person, whereas guarded, you don't know much about the person, whether the person has got family, where the person is from, very secretive. So total up this course. Total up this course. Okay. So like I said, the highest possible score you could get was 128. The lowest possible score is 16. The midpoint is 72. If you're 85 or higher, you'll be categorized as high scorers. And if you're 60 or below, you can be categorized as low scorers. So this is not an exam, so it doesn't mean that higher scores are better than low scores. As I said, this is contingency theory, right? The box at the top right-hand corner, contingent and trait. So high scorers are good in certain environments, and low scorers are good in other kinds of environment. So what kind of environment are we talking about? Let's go to the slides on Fiedler now. Okay, what is Fiedler's theory? It's a theory that effective groups depend on proper match between leader style of interacting with subordinates and the degree to which the situation gives control and influences the leader. And the questionnaire is basically measuring whether a person is task-oriented or relationship-oriented. And we'll talk about this in just a moment. I'll just go to the next slide. Now, there's a graph, and you see the word task-oriented up there? Okay, next to the word task-oriented, I'd like you to write the words low LPC score, or low LPC scorers. And next to the word relationship-oriented, high LPC scorers. Next to the word relationship-oriented, right? High LPC scorers. So now you know what that means in terms of scores. And we'll talk about the challenges of this theory again. Now, since none of you are relationship-oriented and some of you are task-oriented, let's look at the line, the dotted line, which represents the task-oriented leader. The ones who raised your hand, bear in mind, so pay attention because this relates to you. Your performance is best, and I'm talking about the task-oriented leader. Your performance is best here and here when the situation is either unfavorable or favorable. Whereas the relationship-oriented leader is best when the situation is moderate. What do I mean by favorable, unfavorable, moderate? In terms of these three categories: leader-member relations, task structure, and position power. So favorable, leader-member relations are good, task structure is high, and position power is strong. And also you're good in the opposite, where leader-member relations are poor, task structure is low, and position power is weak. So if you want more elaborate explanations of what is leader-member relations, is a slide before that. Leader-member relations, the degree of confidence, trust, and respect subordinates have in their leader. Yes, leader-member relations. And position power, influence from one's formal structural position, and the power to hire and fire, discipline, all that. And task structure is the degree to which the job assignments are procedurized. Just a second. I'll get back to you. So according to Fiedler, a task-oriented leader is good where it's either very strong or very weak. And let's explore why they say it's like. Let's start with the weak. Now, when leader-member relations are poor and task structure is low and position power is weak, that usually describes a company or an organization as going downsizing. That means they are probably not doing well, and then they have to lay off or retrench some of the workforce. A lot of the jobs will have to be redesigned, job descriptions have to be changed. So that kind of leader who is task-oriented would be more suitable compared to a relationship-oriented person, because the task-oriented leader would not be burdened by guilt or emotion when they are retrenching others. In contrast to the relationship-oriented leader. Now, why, according to Fiedler, why are they also good in the favorable? Well, according to Fiedler, if the leader-member relation is already good, the task is very structured and position power is very strong, then the leader does not have to waste time building employee relations because it's already good. So they just need to focus on the task and then the job gets done. People are eager to carry out the job. So they don't waste time, the task-oriented leader doesn't waste time, and they'll be effective in this kind of situation. Whereas the relationship-oriented leader would be better somewhere in the middle, where the company is doing okay, but there's also a lot of competitors. They want to improve their market share and so on. So the relationship-oriented leader will probably be the one to motivate people to get a good performance. Now, one more thing before I forget, I'd like to emphasize is that this is Fiedler's theory. So according to Fiedler, people cannot change their behavior. So if you're task-oriented, you'll be like this for at least a number of years in the future. You can't change overnight. And if you're relationship-oriented, again, you'll be, your character will be stable. So what happens when at first the situation is moderate, and then you have a relationship-oriented leader, which is good, a good match, but then the situation changes and becomes unfavorable. But the relationship-oriented leader is still the leader there. What should you do? Well, according to Fiedler, because you cannot change a person, it's useless to send this person for training course to change their behavior, or to change their personality, to change their personality, because according to Fiedler, you are what you are. You cannot change who you are. So if that is a situation where the company becomes unfavorable, then that leader has to be replaced. From the relationship-oriented leader to be replaced by a task-oriented leader. And that's what a lot of companies in the US in the late 80s, they went from moderate to unfavorable. The leaders were initially relationship-oriented, and they were fired and replaced by a task-oriented leader. In fact, there was one person, what he did was he joined the company, retrenched nearly half of the workforce, reorganized, and then he would resign from that position to join another company to do exactly the same thing. Retrench people, reorganize, and he made a lot of money, but he cut a lot of jobs. So much cutting that they call him Chainsaw Al, a nickname they gave him. Okay? So that's what you do. The summary of how can you make use of Fiedler's model? If you know what your score is, and say if you are a task-oriented leader because you had low LPC score, what you have to do is you have to choose or place yourself in a position or in an organization where it's either favorable or unfavorable. And if you are a relationship-oriented leader, your LPC scores are high, then you shouldn't place yourself in either of these extremes. You should try to find an organization that is moderate. Because a relationship-oriented leader who's placed in an environment where they have to retrench people, they probably will not be able to sleep at night. Okay, we finished with the contingency theory, which is trade. Now we're in the bottom right-hand corner, the box on the bottom right-hand corner, which is still contingency, but it is now a behavioral theory. Okay, and it's what he's saying is that there's a good leader behavior in a certain situation, and you have to change your behaviors according to the situation. So it's focused on behaviors. And this is a very interesting theory, Hershey Blanchard's situation leadership or life cycle theory. Why is it called life cycle theory? Hands on those who've got children, or got children. Okay, or those without children, you have experience of having your children grow up around you, right? Your brothers or your sister's children. Right? Okay, now let me ask you this. A 6-month-old child, do you expect that baby to do things for itself, like go to the toilet by itself, make your own meal and all that. You don't expect it, right? Because you know a 6-month-old baby is very much helpless, and you need to do everything for the baby, right? So you don't scold the baby. Why did you go to the toilet? You know, you don't, right? But what if it's a normal child but is 6 years old? Would you expect the child to go to the toilet by himself or herself? Yeah, you would expect, right? So if they still, do it in their clothing, you scold them. Why did you go to the toilet earlier? So you'd expect that kind of initiative or responsibility. But if the child says, "I'm hungry," do you say, "Okay, go to the kitchen and cook," or go to McDonald's and buy a burger? Do you say that? A 6-year-old child? No, you won't, right? So a 6-year-old child would have more, or you'd expect it to do more by himself or herself, but still there's a lot of things you still have to do for that child. Right? What about when the child is 16 years old? 16 years old, obviously you shouldn't be, you should be going to the toilet by themselves. What if they say they're hungry and you're in a shopping mall? Can you say, okay, you queue up for McDonald's? At 16 or 18, maybe okay, right? Fine. But would you give absolute freedom to the child, like they can go out at night and come back whenever they want? In our kind of society, no, right? Especially ladies, you have to come back by a certain time, right? So even at 16, although there's a lot of freedom and things expected from that child, there's not absolute response, not absolute freedom, right? But what if the child is, no longer a child, is already like 46 years old, and you're still the parent, a bit older, and do you call up your son or daughter, "Hey, what time did you get back last night? Where did you go?" Do you do that?
Sometimes yes.
Well, sometimes it happens to you. Well, I mean, is that the right thing to, yeah, maybe it does happen, right? But is that the right thing to do, to be checking up on your 46-year-old son or daughter, what time they came back last night, what they did, and monitoring like that? No, it's not proper, right? It happens, but it's not the proper thing to do. So you notice that, as the age progresses, as they get older, the nature of relationship in terms of between the parent and the child, what the parent does for the child and what the parent expects from the child, it changes over time, right? So you notice it changes over time. So this, according to Hazim Blanchard, the same thing, or similar thing, not same, similar thing happens between with the supervisor or the boss and the subordinate. If the subordinate is a fresh graduate, no working experience, first day on the firm, in the company, it's very much like a newborn child. Doesn't know what to do, where to go. So there's a lot of telling and supervision for that person. But as that person gains experience, provided the person is in the same job and getting experience, then isn't the boss entitled to expect the person to be more independent and give the person more freedom? Same thing, right? So it's like that, as the child or as the employee gains experience, the boss will go from the telling stage right up to that delegation stage. There's about 4 stages in between. I will give I think a more detailed PowerPoint slide by the next class or the next week. But it's basically from the telling stage. We say it's like telling, selling, and all that. And then the last one is delegating. Delegating means an employee who is already like 5 years on the job, the same job. A boss is entitled to expect that the employee is able to work with minimal guidance and supervision. So that's the ideal the ideal relationship. It changes over time. But yet, from your personal experience, just like me, you're probably unfortunate enough to experience the opposite extremes, where the boss on the first day is already delegating, and you don't know what to do, and you feel that you should get more guidance. Or another boss, which even though you've got more than 5 years working experience, the boss is still telling you what to do. Okay? This theory is not in any of the boxes, because it's actually like like a description rather than a prescription of what to do. A description meaning describing how leaders and subordinates behave, rather than a prescription which is telling how a good leader should behave. It's just saying that, often leaders will have two groups of subordinates. The in-group, and the in-group are the favorite employees, where there's a lot of trust and high interactions. And usually the reason is that because these people are very good, very competent. And then everyone else who's not in the in-group, they are in the out-group. And the relations are very formal. Now, when it's based, the selection of the people in the in-group is based on competence, then I think it's okay. But sometimes in some organizations, as you probably know, the in-groups are the people who are very close to the leader because maybe of relation, blood relation, or maybe they just flatter the boss, say, boss, you're looking 10 years younger, and behind the boss they're saying, oh, this boss is looking really old, That one is not good when it's based on that. But when it's based on competence, then it's quite natural for this to happen. Is it a good thing? Well, sometimes not. Often it's not. But this is what happens. Leaders tend to have their favorite subordinates, and then the rest are just the rest.
Sir, if the inner group are competent, so the outer group are what, the poor performers?
They're not. They're not as good as this one. Yeah. Goal theory. It's one of the, I think, quite a detailed way of looking at leadership. Something that makes sense, but not all of the parts are proven. Okay? Path goal theory. Now, very complicated definition there. I would actually just delete this whole definition. And I would look at this diagram and formulate a definition based on this diagram. And my definition is this, you can write this down. The path goal theory, what this theory is the correct match, the correct match between the leader behavior with environmental contingency factors and subordinate contingency factors. Let me repeat it. The correct match between leader behavior and environmental contingency factors and subordinate contingency factors will result in high performance and satisfaction. I repeat it. Okay. will result in high performance and satisfaction. So, I'll repeat that. The correct match between the leader behavior and the environmental and subordinate contingency factors will result in high performance and satisfaction. Okay, just look at this is actually a conceptual framework. Right? So have a look at the conceptual framework of the path goal theory. So leader behavior, you have 4 possible options: directive, participative, achievement-oriented, and supportive. Right? So now the way to explain this theory, other than drawing out the conceptual framework, the way to explain it is to just pick up a few examples and explain them. So you have directive leader behavior. Now, what kind of structure, task structure? Okay, let me go to subordinate first. It probably is easier to figure out. Directive leader behavior and subordinate contingency factors. Let's say experience. Okay? Now, would a directive leader be more suited, or would a directive style be more suited for an experienced subordinate or no experience, inexperienced subordinate? Which one is more suited?
No, it's directive to
Directive, non-experienced, right? Because if a non-experienced employee, they don't know what to do. So you need to direct them what to do. An experienced one, you might not need to direct them as much. Right? So inexperienced is more suitable for directive. What about locus control? If you remember locus control, internal versus external. Internal, who believe that they are masters of their own fate, they decide what to do, when to do. Whereas external, they're always looking outside. Which one is better for a directive? External or internal? External, because external is the one looking outside for direction. Internal, they will say, you don't have to tell me what to do, I know what to do, or I'll decide. They don't like the boss telling them what to do, the internals. So directive will be more suited for those with external locus control compared to internal. What about perceived ability? If a person is able, but they think they're not able to carry out the task, would a directive leader be good?
Yes.
I think so. The person is capable of doing the task, but maybe they lack confidence, so they would benefit by having a directive leader who tells them, just do it. And then they find that, oh, it's not that difficult after all. Okay. So a directive leader is suitable for subordinate with low perceived ability. So clear on that. So it's a proper match between the style and the kind of subordinate that you have. Now, let's look up here. Environmental contingency factors. Task structure. You have task which is fairly structured versus unstructured. Unstructured, it means there's no procedure, no guidelines. So directive leader is suitable for unstructured or structured tasks. Unstructured or structured? Unstructured, right? It's unstructured, right? A directive leader would, you can still be a directive leader for both, but which one will benefit more when the task is unstructured? When unstructured meaning there's no manual, there's no set procedure, A, B, C, and all that. When all is unknown, when the task is unstructured, then a directive leader to tell you what to do would be more beneficial. Whereas, if the task is fairly structured, you don't really need a leader to tell you what to do because you know what to do. Unless, of course, there's motivation problems, then there's a slightly, in both cases also you need a directive leader, but I'm talking about if you just look at the task itself. An unstructured task, you will benefit more by a leader telling you what to do. Formal authority system, like in the military, will it benefit from a directive leader? Yeah, because a directive leader would fit in a military situation. You put a directive leader in a university or academic situation, not so suitable. It happens in some universities, but it's not desirable. But in the military, you would expect that. All leaders should be directive. And the work group is a bit difficult to relate here. I think probably work group relates to the participative and supportive. So what this theory is saying is that when you have a proper match, you have high performance and satisfaction. When there's a mismatch, then there's low performance and satisfaction. Low mismatch example, you have a directive leader with the internal locus of control, a person who's very experienced. You put the two together, it's going to be a lot of conflict. And then you have low performance and satisfaction. But performance might still be okay, but definitely satisfaction will go down. So it makes a lot of sense, and that's why I like this theory, because it's similar to the person-environment fit theory, which was my PhD area, and something which I continue doing research in. It's about a match between the person and environment, or between the person and the leader. The leader is being the kind of environment as well. So you have a good match, you have high performance satisfaction. You have a mismatch, low performance and satisfaction. So it's a useful theory to explain from that point of view. You just pick up the examples like I did in class, and that's how we explain this theory. The only objections or limitations of this theory is not fully tested. For example, like participative, achievement, supportive, when are those behaviors more appropriate? Because if you don't have, say for example, locus control, like internal locus control, you don't have a directive leader. So which one should you have? Supportive, participative? Not really clear. And this is where the theory is a bit weak. And I tested out, I tested out this model, and some parts did not work. So it's not a perfect model, but I think what you can take from this theory is that the idea that you match the leader behavior with the subordinate and with the environment, you match it well, you will have the high performance and satisfaction. You mismatch, and then you will affect the performance and satisfaction. So that's how you can make use of this theory here. And remember, it's a behavioral dimension, contingent behavioral, meaning that the same leader can be directive towards the external locus control person, but if he has another subordinate who is internal, he shouldn't be directive. So the same leader should exhibit different behaviors for different kinds of subordinates, and if the environment changes. So that's what, according to the behavioral school, is, a good leader is the one that knows what kind of behaviors works best in what kind of situations. The behavioral contingent school. So you should have like a variety of possible behaviors, and you know how to select which behavior is appropriate for which situation. And that's the best leader. Yeah?